members of the public?
No members of the public.
Do you want to just dispense with your regular instructions then, or is that something we need to do?
I'll dispense with it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine tonight.
So our first order of business is the Small Lane Extension Definitive Subdivision application.
Thank you, board members. For the record, my name's Jack Sullivan. I'm owner of the Sullivan Engineering Group, and I'm here with the applicant tonight, Joe Marino. Small Lane Extension is a proposed one-lot subdivision. Small Lane is an existing roadway that presently dead ends. We're looking to extend it to service one home. I'm going to give you a little bit of history on this site. Back in 2019, with a different applicant, this was brought to Cpdc as a two-lot subdivision, as a preliminary subdivision. That's expired. But at that time also, we had gone to the Conservation Commission, and there was a lot of legwork done that still holds true to this date, so that's why I want to bring it up. We had wetlands flagged in 2019, and an order of resource area delineation was issued by the Conservation Commission. With all the governor's extensions, that's still in effect. So our wetland line's still good. We've had multiple DRT meetings over the last 5 years on this, but most recently we just had one about 2 weeks ago for this project, and it was very productive. And I've had 2 meetings with the Conservation Commission on this application. I wanted to get into them first before I came to CPDC, mainly because we have a stream crossing and some wetland filling and replication. Can you just show the cover sheet 1, Andrew? So this is the cover sheet. The site's highlighted. The site consists of 3 lots. A portion of number 18 Small Lane, a portion of number 22 Small Lane, and a landlocked piece to the rear of number 366 Charles Street. The total land area is 14.2 acres. The entire site's within the S20 zoning district, and we will be requesting some design waivers from CPDC that I'll circle back on. You can go to the next sheet, Andrew. Okay, so this is the lotting plan. We're proposing a 50-foot right-of-way. So Small Lane presently is a 50-foot right-of-way that ends in a hammerhead configuration, but the pavement's not constructed that way. There is no hammerhead turnaround. It just dead ends. On paper, it looks like it would be a hammerhead. So we're extending the 50-foot layout, and we're showing it going to a, I'm showing a rounding like a conventional cul-de-sac, but I'll have more discussion on that. That's been changed. But the layout would still show us that and provide our frontage for the single family lot. This roadway will remain private.
Isn't it a driveway?
No.
Okay.
We tried that. So back in 2019, we were saying, okay, let's, instead of building a quote unquote roadway, even though we'll be seeking waivers to a 24-foot roadway width, we were seeing if we could just do a driveway, but the town did not like that. The idea of having a full turnaround for emergency vehicles and snow plowing was one of the issues that drove that.
Okay.
And I'm using that to support the waiver request. I'll get into that, but the dead end road length is 730 feet long, and the town has a maximum dead end road length of 500 feet. So by having a turnaround now, that lends to support the waiver request. I'll go to the existing conditions page, next sheet. So this is the existing site. I've located all the trees 6 inches or greater within the work area, not on the entire 14 acres, but within our workspace. I located them. With one of my previous designs, I had shown the roadway extension with a full cul-de-sac. I've changed it to a hammerhead now. That was based on discussions with the Conservation Commission. with my previous design, I had 57 trees to be removed. Conservation wanted to see if I could do anything different by either relocating a cul-de-sac, doing a different layout. I did come up with a hammerhead, which I'll talk about. But now by changing my design, now only 35 trees will be cut down. So that's pretty good. That's for the roadway and for the home construction. There's an existing access easement that presently exists over number 22 Small Lane. That'll become part of the roadway, and I do have to create a little parcel to give number 22 sufficient frontage on the new roadway. So that'll be coming. Because when we take that stretch, they'd be under the 120 feet of frontage. So I'm going to add some frontage to them so that they're conforming. I'll put that in a table and make it clear as can be. Okay, we can go to the site plan, Andrew. Okay. So this is the proposed site plan. So we do have a stream crossing. So it's, right in that area. It's a little strange. There's a 12-inch PVC pipe that runs between two wetlands, and there's like a footpath over it. And the pipe is silted in. It hasn't been functioning for years. So when I say a stream, this isn't what you would think of as a stream. Nothing's flowing, but under the standards, it's classified as a stream, and as such, I have to span between the two wetlands. So I have to put in a box culvert, and there's certain ratios that I need to meet for openness and vertical clearances, and I've done so. And when I start off some of the history on this site will be important to this board too. When this was a 2-lot subdivision, which was really the same road design, the only thing that changed was we had 2 houses at the end. We were peer reviewed with the Conservation Commission. We had 2 peer reviewers, one for drainage and one for wetlands. So this had the crossing, the wetland replication, all that had been peer reviewed in the past. So now we're talking with Conservation saying we don't really think we need a peer review. I think they're on board with that, but we have a meeting coming up with them in another week and we'll get that squared away. But I don't think we'll need a peer review. So this is known as a limited project. We have to do the stream crossing to access some upland. We're proposing 24 feet of pavement with asphalt curbing and no sidewalks. So under your subdivision regs, you look for vertical granite curbing. We'd be requesting a waiver from that. The wetland crossing, as I stated, we'd have a 3-sided open box culvert, 18 feet wide by 33 feet long, and it's about 4 feet high. Previously, my last design, which isn't here now, but I had the box culvert 41 feet long. Commission asked if I could try to shrink that up and shrink up my limit of work to minimize the wetland impacts. So I did. I was able to pull, there's some retaining walls along the edges of the roadway. There'll be a guardrail, and I could shrink the box culvert. The biggest change, and you didn't see the other one, but you see where the bulb is for the right-of-way layout. Before I had a conventional cul-de-sac with no landscaped island, but that cul-de-sac extended within the 25 and 35 foot buffer zone to the wetlands. Conservation said that try to change that. Try to come up with a design, either relocate the cul-de-sac or do a different configuration. So at my DRT meeting 2 weeks ago, the fire department was there. I said, what if I tried a hammerhead? I can pull all the roadway outside of the 35-foot buffer zone of the wetlands. I can limit the amount of trees to be removed, and it gives me the chance to do a different type of drainage design. My previous drainage design behind the proposed house, I was putting a detention basin. Some neighbors were at the last Conservation Commission meeting I had, and even though the basin was sized correctly, it stored the 2 and 10 year storm event, and there was just a slight outflow in the 100-year. With this design now, I'm able to put in precast concrete boxes to collect stormwater and provide infiltration. I did do soil testing with the town engineering department. We have really good soils for infiltration, sand and gravels, which is the best case for soils. And I was able to determine groundwater elevations. I've cited the system 2 feet above the high groundwater table. I still have to do a new stormwater report, which I will be working on this week. I had a full stormwater report for the detention basin, but for tonight's meeting, I just wanted to show this new concept, get some feedback from CPDC, specifically on the hammerhead. And the fire department will weigh in on that too at some point.
Is the perforated area in the curve of the hammerhead, is that elevated or what?
It is
Or
elevated.
just planted, okay.
Yep, it'll be elevated. That hatched area off the hammerhead, that's snow storage. We show some snow storage. We will have municipal water and sewer extended. I'm showing a hydrant to be placed. Yep, right there. Thank you, Andrew. We're not proposing to sprinkler the building, but would have a hydrant. And now with the turnaround, it'll give the fire department a way to get in if there was a fire, to fight it and get out. Just to go through some of the waivers, on the cover sheet, I had a number of waivers. We can go through them all, but the main ones, the main one is requiring 30 feet of pavement. We're proposing 24. Just so you know, conservation was hoping I could get down to 20 or 22, but in previous DRTs with the town engineer, the minimum was told to us to be 24. So I think, and the reason for the 24 is, and it makes sense, you have the berm, and if there's snow and they plow, you're gonna lose a foot to 18 inches with snow along the side, which would limit your travel space. So it makes sense. You don't want to get too narrow, then have your snow and get into a situation where you couldn't support two-way traffic.
Looking for CPA.
The other,
Conference room, potentially? Conference room right next door, I think.
and like I mentioned, a waiver will be relief from the maximum dead end length of 500 feet where it's 730.91. Another one's requiring sidewalks along both sides of the roadway. We're not proposing sidewalks. And then the other one's requiring granite curbing to be installed. We're looking to do an asphalt berm. We do show the house that's looking to be built there. Joe will actually be living there. He's gonna look to relocate from North Andover to Reading. And like I said, we had 2 meetings with Concom. It's going well. They had seen this for 5 years, so it's not new to them, but it's new to this board. Back when I came in front of this board in 2019, I don't think any of you were here. Maybe you were.
I have
Yeah.
a really vague recollection of
maybe you
this,
were.
yeah.
But that was pre-COVID, and that we got approved for the preliminary subdivision, but that's long expired. We didn't follow up with the definitive in time.
All right.
So I'll turn it over to CPDC for any questions they might have.
Okay, thank you. I do have some questions. Others might as well. If you guys don't mind, I'll just go ahead and start. My first question was going to be, has Conservation Commission reviewed? Thank you for explaining the hammerhead. That makes more sense to me because it looked to me like the initial plan had more wetlands impact than this one. I've got a couple of questions, a few questions. One is, I noticed that the building would be built right at the 86-foot elevation, and that the wetland is at 80, and what our regulations say is that it needs to be 6 feet above the water. So it looks like we just have enough. Is there going to be a basement, and do we know where the groundwater level is? Because our regulations also say that a basement needs to be 2 feet above, I think the groundwater level.
There would be a basement. And I have the basement elevation at 82.33, and like you said, the water tables, I had one test hole at 79.5 and one at 80, so it's more than 2 feet above.
Okay. Oh, I guess I did see that somewhere in there.
So I have first floor at 91, top of foundation at 90, basement at 82.33.
Okay, so it'll be like a very high basement, like a daylight type basement.
Yeah.
While you've got that up there, can you tell me what the dewatering area is about?
Probably not needed, but in the case when Joe's doing utilities like the water and sewer lines, if they're excavating to put in those pipes and they encountered water and had to pump the water out of those trenches, you need an area to pump the water to. You can't just let it go. So that dewatering area, it's temporary. It would be basically hay bales set up with crushed stone, and then the dewatering pump, and they'd have the pump in the trench, and they'd run a hose up into that dewatering area, and then water would go out, and then that way any silt or mud would stay in that area, but water could make its way out through the hay bales. We don't anticipate needing it, but the Conservation Commission likes to see a location for it if the case comes up that you need it.
And so speaking of utilities, I was wondering, at the turn there's just a lot going on, so it's hard to see everything. So would, like, the water and sewer, I mean, the water is, you don't have that much room. So would water and sewer be brought in like under the road? Are they gonna be going through the water? How exactly does that work?
Under the road and under the culvert.
Under the road and under the culvert, and under the culvert is wetland, right?
Yeah.
So it'd just be underground, under the water, basically, is the way it would, okay.
Yep, which is, that happens, yep. Because when you put in your water pipes and sewer pipes, it's watertight, they run pressure tests. But I think that's the reason for the dewatering area. And in the area of the culvert, could be one area where you encounter some water when you're excavating.
And the little bridge would be forever maintained by the homeowner? Those can be expensive to replace.
Yeah, because it's private. But it's precast concrete, it should last longer than Joe lasts.
Yes, I say this knowing that there are like some communities where a bridge has gone out and stranded an entire community because it's expensive to replace it. So if that entire burden is being placed on a single homeowner instead of even a neighborhood, that's somebody's burden later on.
Right. So we had this discussion at DRT. If this was 2 lots and it's going to remain private, we would have had to establish a homeowners association. And in that homeowners association, the responsibilities for upkeep would be spelled out between the 2 homeowners. In this case, Joe's the single homeowner. You don't need a homeowners association if it's one owner. So it falls on him for the responsibility. But really the responsibility on this will be more, the catch basins, he needs to keep them clean. There's an operation and maintenance plan that I'll submit, they have to be cleaned here, annually. Reports have to be given to the town engineer. But mostly it's not a heavy lift or expensive things that he'd have to go through. It's more just, making sure leaves and sticks aren't on the grate. If there's a sump in the catch basin, if it gets so much sand in it, he'd have to have someone come in and clean it. But it's not going to be an excessive amount of maintenance.
So how does that work in the long run? Like, Joe will know about that, and we hope Joe's around for a long time, but when the house gets sold, how does that get transferred to the new homeowner with the same obligations and understandings?
It's a good question.
That's why I'm asking it.
Yeah, I feel like
You put a deed restriction in.
I feel like we need something in the deed or something to expect to it that
Yeah, it needs to be a permanent thing.
transfer to.
It's a big responsibility, way beyond what, most homeowners around here would have.
The order of conditions from conservation is recorded. And when the attorney were to pull a deed search or the title search on the property, they typically dig those up with them. In my experience, just saying. But
It's a good point.
With regard to the question, it is town water and town sewer?
Yep.
Are they going to have the depth to run a sewer back to, I forgot what, a Sleepy Road or whatever it is?
Yes, but I can get gravity flow back to the sewer system at the end of Small Lane.
Okay.
On the drainage, if you don't mind, so these two catch basins, I assume, are catching the top half of the road.
Yep.
And that's funneling it to the pre-treatment.
And where are the catch basins on it?
It's a little tough to see, but they're right here.
It's really hard to see what's going on.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there.
And the lower half of the road is going towards the existing catch basins,
I see them.
and those don't have pre-treatment.
Right.
Okay.
But just if I can point out on this, I know it from, it's really from like here, this is draining back,
Mm-hmm.
and then this small section's going this way.
Mm-hmm.
So when we were peer reviewed on the drainage previously, there's something called in the stormwater, if it's de minimis and you have to prove, and it was such a small area going back that I didn't have to provide pre-treatment,
Gotcha.
and the peer reviewer agreed. But I had to provide calculations showing that.
And this type of drainage system doesn't have like emergency overflow or outlets.
No, so I'm going to be able to, and I still have to work out the numbers, but I'll be storing the 210 and 100-year storm.
In those concrete basins or
Yep.
whatever they are?
Yep. So those are, they're actually, the company's called Retain It. They're 8 by 8. And then you can get different heights. These are gonna be 3 foot high. So you get a lot of storage volume in them, and they're really good. They go together like little Lego blocks. They can be put in easily, and they give you the most bang for your buck for stormwater.
And do they need to be cleaned out over time
no.
for sediment that gets in them?
No,
Okay.
but what needs to be cleaned out is what Andrew just showed, those catch basins. So these 2 catch basins right here, they'll have 4 foot deep sumps.
Mm-hmm.
And then from those so there could be accumulated sand that would have to be removed. And then they're piped to a storm scepter, so there's some maintenance with a storm scepter. But a storm scepter takes out any oils or any floatables, because prior to going to those precast Retain It units, you basically you want everything to be as clean as possible. So you want all the total suspended solids removed, or as much as you can, and that's how it keeps the infiltration field functioning. If you didn't have the treatment, then that area could clog, which you don't want.
Yeah.
But that does pump it upgrade.
That's what I'm,
You don't have to pump
okay.
it, but it flows by gravity. So
So explain this to me. So the water comes down,
Yep.
it goes into the catch basins, and
Yep.
then it's still going further down,
you got it.
and there's enough that, because you're still only like 6 feet above the wetland, so
There's
there's
still
enough
enough.
space to do that?
Yep. So I'm tasked, the bottom of my infiltration structures have to be 2 feet above the water table. So
So you're
they
doing
are.
all that within 4 feet?
Sorry, but the water is coming down, catch basin collected, and then going back up to these
It's going
blocks.
back up.
Huh.
But it's going down
But
while
the-
it goes
but
back
right,
up.
right.
The pipes go down, the road goes up.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the reason I extend it the way I do, because where those catch basins are your low point. So the
Mhm.
lowest point on this site are these 2 catch basins.
Mhm.
So the reason I'm extending up here is because these structures are 3 feet high, and I need the roads now going
Right.
up, so I have enough cover on the top of those.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Was never discussed about the berms on the road being removed?
about the berms being removed.
Well, you've got natural runoff then. You're not collecting it all.
Well, the reason for the berms is actually to keep the road drainage in the road and bring them to those catch basins.
Yeah,
So the
pre-treatment.
berm's 6 inches high,
Yeah, but you have
And-
wetlands on both sides, right?
and it's on both sides.
So for the pre-treatment, we need to collect it
Yeah.
before the discharge.
We looked at different things, like before if Joe came along, the previous applicant, I looked at doing like country drainage where I'd have gaps in the curbing and go to like a swale but we're so close to the wetlands, it doesn't really work.
And you only have to do it to a 100-year storm?
So I'm tasked, I have to show calculations for the 2, 10, and 100-year storm. The 100-year storm is basically 9 inches of rain in 24 hours. So it's a real heavy rain event. And I have to show
It
that,
happens.
we've seen it though. I mean, we say that and then
We've seen it since I've
the
lived here, I
100-year
think,
storm happens
actually.
every year.
Sure does.
Right, exactly. So there's not a requirement to like look ahead for the 500-year
The
storm.
100-year storm means 1% chance
I know,
happening
yeah.
each year. And like for 5 years, it's happened.
Right.
In a row, probably. You've got 100-year rate is 0.31 CFS. What's that translate to in inches? I'm used to it in inches.
Well, it's all gonna get redone because those are for my
Oh.
detention basin. So I'll have that answer for you when I rewrite
Okay.
the numbers.
And I assume you're using, you say you're using a couple databases for this being one. They're all the most current data?
Yep.
Sources, okay.
So when I take my rain events, I use an extreme precipitation model, which is the most conservative model. I believe though they're looking to redo some of the numbers and some of the storms are even going higher, like from 9 to 10 inches, but that hasn't been published yet.
And is the, I'm looking at the wrong sheet, the access is all secured? It looks like there's an access easement.
Yeah.
Is needed.
Yep. So
Is that secured?
the family that bought number 22, they signed because they're technically an owner. We have an easement. When they purchased this property and they rebuilt this house, they did a nice job on it. They were my client. Brad Latham's office with me and with this owner provided an access easement for any future development with a caveat. When this gets extended, then this would be conveyed in fee to Joe. But what I need to do is, here's their frontage. So when we take that, that would be under 120 feet. So I need to, here's our right of way. I need to create like a line here to here and give them frontage all the way through so we have more than 120. So I'm going to create a parcel here that'll be conveyed to them. And then I'll give a summary table to Olivia and Andrew saying total frontage greater than 120 and that their lot size is greater than 20,000 square feet.
Final plan is your game
Yep.
plan?
Yeah. And I almost have it on my lotting plan. I have a very detailed, there's a lot going on with 3 different parcels and little pieces going here and there. So I told Andrew and Olivia, I try to make it simple because for me, I need it simple to follow it. But I do need to add that little portion.
Yeah, and I think we probably need whatever documentation is available to demonstrate that there's the right of access there.
Yep.
And the fire department's okay with the T turnaround rather than a cul-de-sac?
Well, we need to send that to the fire department and get something in writing that they are. This all just, I mean, we met with them under 2 weeks ago and then I had to do this plan pretty quickly just to get in front of you guys. So it should be submitted to the fire department so we get written comments.
It was submitted to them. We didn't get comments yet, just with the review time. And so I'm sure we'll meet and call or talk with Jack about it in the next few weeks.
And has town engineering looked at this also?
Engineering has looked at it. They did not provide a memo at this time until we quite know where conservation is or is not going with third-party peer reviews or not, and some of these changing elements that just happened on the drainage and everything. So, but they will look at it and provide a memo.
Is there an understanding that there would be no further subdivision?
That's typically a condition in our decisions on
Okay.
these.
We don't have plans to further subdivide, but
I don't know if conservation has asked, but has there been any consideration on a CR conservation restriction or gift to?
They haven't asked.
Yeah.
I know one of the owners wasn't keen on that, the number 18 small lane.
Yeah, not a requirement, but
Yeah.
always an ask.
Is there a reason the topographic lines don't go beyond 80? I noticed like on the, over there somewhere, like within 100 feet, there's standing water somewhere. Is there a reason we don't have a full picture of everything that's going on the?
Once I hit the wetland, I usually stop the lines. The only reason I showed going this way is to show we were going uphill, because some of the neighbors were talking about drainage concerns on the back. So if you see, I have an 80, 80, then 82. So we're starting to move uphill.
What about bottom left?
What about what's going on over on the left side there? Yeah.
I don't have those, but I did ask for a waiver for those. But I mean,
I saw that, which is why I thought, oh, why? I will say my inclination is actually kind of like, I can't imagine it's that much more cost to add all the topographic lines. I like to see what's going on so that we know everything that's potentially impacted.
I can add them from the aerial
Yeah,
map.
I'm always disinclined to give that waiver.
Yeah, I can add that.
Yeah.
I didn't do a full survey of the 14 acres, just for cost reasons, but I can take them from the aerial maps and show.
I think this left and right on 17 and 18 be helpful.
Yeah. I asked a lot of questions. Anybody else have questions?
Jack, I know you said you're gonna use the retainment box. My question, I guess, is are those gonna be providing retainage as well with the grades, or do you intend on, oh, I see the shade block wall next to it.
Yeah,
Okay.
so, the retainers, they're not used as any sort of retaining wall feature. So off the edge of the roadway, I'll have a shade block wall. So we'll have curbing. I leave 1 foot for soil, and then I have the wall. And so in that 1 foot area, I'm gonna show a guardrail to be placed. But the shade block walls will not exceed 4 feet in height.
Okay.
And the retaining, it has nothing to do with retaining soil, but just to retain water.
No, because I know those are pretty structural and you can.
Yeah, that's the reason I picked them too, because they're rated for H20 plus.
Correct, yeah.
And you don't even need any cover on these types of systems. But I'll have like a foot of cover over them. But they're really good for supporting like heavy loads like fire trucks, because they're H20 plus rated.
Yeah. Well, I think you are supposed to have 6 inches of stone all the way around the system.
Yep.
And then the fabric, if I'm not mistaken, but yeah.
Yep.
At least from the last time I saw them. Okay.
And that's all outside the buffer zone now?
Yeah, so Mass DEP water stormwater policy, in order to get credit for infiltration, you have to be 50 feet away from a wetland. So by doing this hammerhead and the way I situated these retainment modules, I'm over 50 feet away. And the hammerhead, I'm pulled entirely outside of the 35-foot buffer zone of the wetland. So this line here is a 35-foot from the wetland. You can see all my works outside of that. And then over here it gets busy, but 25. Here's the 35. So by putting the hammerhead the way I did, I'm outside. Before, with the conventional cul-de-sac, I was inside there 25. And they felt, with a limited project crossing the uplands, there's a lot of legal rights for the applicant to do so, but they felt like there could be a better design than being forced a fully conventional cul-de-sac. And in our DRT, the fire department, like I said, was open to the hammerhead.
It is really busy. On that side by the hammerhead that goes down to the road, could you point out where that 35 foot line is again?
Yep.
They must be misreading
Is the
something.
rationale for that requirement mounding of the water?
No. They,
No, I'm just surprised because I would think they'd allow it to drain into the wetlands.
yeah, they don't want that. So they want a 25-foot corridor from the wetlands that's natural, no touch. You're not supposed to do anything in there. It's supposed to be natural. And then between the 25 and 35, you can do grading, but they don't want a structure. So here's a 25-foot line from the wetlands. So you can see my walls. That's a proposed wall. It's outside the 25 feet. Here's the 35-foot line right here.
So the walls and the hydrant are in the 35.
Okay, and is part of the road in the 35 later on down
Part of the
there?
road as we get down here, you can see it's definitely within the 35.
Yeah.
And they understand that's okay. You can't do anything about that. But we could do something with the turnaround.
But that impact of the 35 is where your replication comes into play, or that's the culvert?
No, that's where we cross, so.
Well, that's what I'm wondering also, because I see
No,
some
see-
replication, but
see
not all
these
the way
green-
up there in the 35,
These
yeah.
green areas are where we're filling wetlands to put the road in. So we're filling 566 square feet. So out of 14 acres, we're filling 566 square feet. Conservation has a requirement, then you have to replicate it at 2-to-1 ratio. So we're replicating it greater than 2-to-1. So the green is filling, and then this is, we have a detailed plan. This is going to be planted with like 7 or 8 trees, 30 shrubs, wetland mix, seed mix. It's very detailed what we're proposing there.
Others may have questions, but on that point, I feel not very qualified to, it's good it's over at conservation, because that's where they have the expertise, and I would be kind of inclined to let that play out and see if anything changes there. I mean, I've got questions, but it's really, I defer to conservation with what is acceptable to them on that.
That's why we went to them first.
Smart.
Most of this, besides like the dead end road length waiver, and a lot of this falls on them. Even the stormwater review, they you know, Ryan, the town engineer, will look at it too, but most of that falls with them.
And I think, you know, at least one of my concern is for making sure that Joe doesn't get flooded out later on, because the wetlands have been altered in a way that isn't so good.
So it's just so you know.
And also kind of the long-term maintenance.
Yep.
And the fire department being okay with the access and turnaround. It's a long way.
Yep, and this crossing, I told you that pipe silted in. So a lot of these neighbors are getting flooded now because no water can move through. So by putting this culvert, we're making it a better situation.
No, I'm totally on board with that, and then that's also why I kind of want to see what's happening over on the other side, because you'll be opening it up, and so where there may not be flow now, there may be flow, you never know, right? I mean, we probably do know, somebody knows. Other questions from the commission?
Here's just a statement. I see that, let's see, you're gonna submit an O&M plan. We're gonna have to come up with some way to tie it to the deed so that it would be discovered on a subsequent transfer. And you've got property that you have to convey to the southern owner to get up to the.
That's correct. Yep.
Very well summarized, and we need the kind of affirmation from the fire department that this is all right.
Yeah, that's really first and foremost, because that can change the design.
It can change everything.
Okay.
You're squeezing a lot into a pretty narrow area there.
Yeah, it's really nice out there though, when you get out there.
No doubt. So is that what you were looking for from us today? I don't think we're to the place of
I'd look to
approving this.
continue
Yeah,
this board. I really just wanted to make this presentation. I think it's important we get the feedback from the fire department on the Hammerhead. And we'll come back before you. We have a meeting coming up, I think next week with Concom.
okay. Also, were we supposed to have was this a hearing that we needed to
That's
open it?
true, yes, should have read the legal notice.
What do we do now? Nobody's here. The hearing notice is in there, so. Yeah,
It did get mailed.
yeah, I think we absolutely should continue, and I don't know, how much time do you need? Do you wanna continue to next month? How long is conservation gonna take, or do you wanna continue for 2 months out?
Next month, because Joe's on a schedule he's in a purchase and sale, and we're trying to move forward. So this will be our third meeting with Concom coming up, and we hopefully should be close with them.
Okay, and on that question, Guy made a good point that, conditions for maintenance would be in the order of conditions, but I really am interested in how that gets conveyed to future owners. I mean, we have lots of places in the state that are, people dealing with relics, things that they've inherited over time, and that's, it can cause problems later on. And if we're approving this, we should make sure that that's somehow recorded in the deed. I don't know if people discover the orders of conditions when they're buying houses. I kind of doubt it, but somewhere in there.
Yeah, I would think any title searcher is going to search and find a O&M plan. If it's tied in there, they're going to find it. And I'd say if it's in a separate O&M plan, it'll be
If it's tied with the order of conditions, you think, from the,
No.
yeah, right,
separate O&M plan.
yeah.
Um,
Because that's a big commitment to take that on for the long
What's a
haul.
little, can you pull up the site plan for 1 second, Andrew? I'll show you. So small lane's a private way. So technically, the town's not really supposed to go in there and do anything. So we talk about maintenance, Joe will be taking over this, but there's drainage out here. Who knows who maintains that? You don't even, you know what I mean? It's not like these homeowners do. But now, on the newly created drainage, Joe will take control of that. But typically, I was a town engineer in North Andover, and typically it was responsive. Like if someone called and there's a concern, then you go out. The town wasn't great at just going out and for drainage maintenance, maybe a little better now. But on private ways, the town's limited. They're not supposed to go in on them.
Right, and so future homeowners need to know that they have a lot of responsibility for a lot of way and a little bridge
Joe,
also.
you can never sell.
No, that's my point, is that the house will eventually sell. And, if a young couple that doesn't know how to maintain a house buys it and they find out they're stuck with this bridge, that's something a homeowner should know as they're purchasing it.
That's true.
And I'd be curious if you could tick off your waivers again. I have no problem with approving a 500, 700, whatever foot waiver in the length, because you've got the fire hydrant up there.
Okay.
So long as the fire department agrees.
Yeah.
What other waivers do you need?
The roadway width,
First page.
you guys call for 30 feet, we're asking for 24.
I don't have a problem with that.
Same.
And then the curbing, the granite curbing, and we're proposing asphalt.
I don't have a problem with
I
that.
think that's appropriate.
Also the same.
And sidewalks, and we don't need
Right.
sidewalks there. So see what conservation says and come back to us. I guess, when is our next meeting?
December 8th?
December 8th?
Yep. I believe what I get. Yeah.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Well, let's make a motion. So would somebody like to move to continue it to December 8th?
Well,
Getting all lax here with a small group.
I'll move that we continue this matter to December 8th.
Second.
Okay, and we'll do roll call.
Second.
Thank you, Guy. And we'll do roll call. So online we have Guy.
Yes.
We have Andrew now.
Oh, good. And Hillary
Yes.
and Andrew,
Yes.
Heather, yes, and Tom.
Yes.
Okay, you're all set, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jack.
Yep, thank you.
See ya.
Thank you.
All right, this is a nice calm meeting. We have a few items to work through here. We've got an Eastern Gateway update and discussion.
Yeah.
Let's do that, and I'm looking at the other ones. Is administrative fees faster than zoning considerations?
Administrative fees is pretty fast. And I have to look into it a little bit more admittedly, but
Okay.
we've been asked to start looking into any fees and revenue collection on the town side and where we might not have looked at things in a while, right? For example, last year, building permit fees were amended and some were slightly increased just because it had been 15, 20 years since we had done that. So we've been asked to look at that again at all our local levels. So we had started to do that, and there was really one that stuck out in terms of CPDC permitting, and I can start gathering more information on it and more comparisons, but actually when we looked at our subdivision fees, Reading was slightly behind some other communities, and I'll say slightly. For example, we charge right now, I believe it's $500 fee for a plan plus $30 per lot or something akin to that. Versus the town of Wakefield was a $2,000 fee plus X per lot. Some were less, some were more, some were equal, but there were certainly others that stuck out as having higher fees. And so if the CPDC was interested, we can collect more information on that, just because the select board and town management has asked us to look at revenue collection. So we can start compiling that information. And to me, that is a CPDC process from what I found, because they're your local regulations. So it's not a town meeting process change. It's just something you could look at and administer if you found fitting in the next 3 to 6 months.
Okay, great. Yeah, why don't you go ahead and do that?
Yeah,
We should
so
try
I'll
to
grab some
cover
comparable communities.
some costs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Andrew,
Yep.
Andrew, let's find the most expensive communities and model after that. We need to make this a revenue center.
Well, and it's also, yeah, I'm interested to know what the spread is, right? There's one thing that's like a revenue center. Philosophically, we should be trying to cover staff costs, right? I'd like to cover our costs too, but we're all volunteers, so that's not gonna happen. But within reason, kind of understanding what is the norm out
Yeah.
there. And yes, and
Exactly. And then you
understanding
could
what the real norm is,
right.
yeah.
Then you could choose we'll match the highest or we'll meet somewhere
Yeah,
in the
with the
middle.
spread,
or,
yeah.
right. So,
And knowing what any outliers are, yeah.
but that was the one fee that stood out. The site plan fees and sign permit fees and stuff all seemed pretty standard, because even our site plan fee can be based off building permit fees and things. So there didn't seem to be a need to change those ones. There's the subdivision ones that particularly stood out.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll do that.
Okay, good, thanks. Why don't we go back up to Eastern Gateway?
Sure. So this is good timing, and it does go a bit hand in hand with 2026 zoning amendments, because these things are for CPDC consideration. But it's certainly of no surprise that for the last year or two, year plus, through past priority development in zoning areas, we were tasked with looking at what we deem the Eastern Gateway. Sorry, I'm trying to pull up my general summary here. I'm not going to go through all of these slides, but just to kind of refresh from past members to new members, this whole area. So let's see here if I do this. In this, the Eastern Gateway is really a large portion of the industrial area, industrial district, which is located along Walker's Brook Drive, near the highway interchange and running down towards downtown. this district here, you can see the train tracks split in the middle. On your left is the DPW facility, RMLD, further to the north. And on your right is the General Way Plaza with Market Basket and other local businesses, the Stop and Shop, and some restaurants. Way back when, in about 2016, this was identified in economic action plans as a priority development area to look at for new considerations. Throughout the past decade, CPDC has tackled priority development areas in an ongoing basis, right? We looked at downtown, you did the smart growth, coming on 10 years now, the smart growth expansion downtown. You looked at South Main Street, where you allowed mixed use, and now most recently passed your second project there. And this was another priority development area established and asked to look at. And so about a year or two ago, we wrote some grants to start engaging in and around this district. For the past year, we've been heavily focused on public engagement around this to reconfirm public priorities. What is this space missing? What would you like to see here? What's appropriately fitting here? And to date, feedback has been fairly consistent in terms of if the town were looked to allow for new development standards to facilitate new development opportunities in the area, that would be appropriate in the commercial, retail, and even in the mixed use sense. And by mixed use, I mean a spread of residential and or commercial across the district. Obviously, mixed use has been a big driver in town growth the last few years, both downtown and on Main Street. And so we've been engaging in and around that with the resident steering committee that's had pretty consistent attendance over the last year from about 5 to 6 members plus. It's hard to get 8 people in the room always at the same time, but it's been pretty consistent. We've held public surveys, we've held public forums, focus groups with abutters and town meeting members, and just last week we held a workshop where we were trying to collaborate on getting the ideas of what zoning can and can't control in these processes. And that's things like setbacks, building locations, building sizes, lot coverages, parking, everything you guys might be more familiar with through your site plan process and other. And again, feedback was pretty positive last week in terms of new allowances and new things to consider in the area. And so I'm going to jump way ahead here because I think we tried to give a lot of this about a few weeks ago. So we've been working with Form in Place Studio to help give visual considerations to what new allowances could potentially facilitate. And so through all the public feedback, what Form in Place developed was this very conceptual, if everything was all redeveloped at once, how can we talk about this, and what's the intensity look like of a site, and what are the appropriate things that the town would like to consider. And so you can see right from the visual perspective, what was being looked at was commercial and retail fronting things like the Walker's Brook Drive and or New Crossing roads, things like bigger buildings here, taller buildings, further away from residential districts in Washington and Village and others. And then maybe a transition down towards something like townhomes, closer to those more residential and downtown areas. This was really all a visual to help zoning discussion. This is not what a development might look like. This is not a proposal in and of itself. It was really to help the public understand what new development opportunities may look like and how zoning can help foster those new opportunities. So things like maybe you do 1 or 2 key anchors of 60,000 square foot big box buildings, more mixed use in the blue, and then variety retail spread across the site. And those are things that zoning can help facilitate. And so working through this with the public, I think we've gotten some reinforcement throughout this last year that mixed use is somewhat appropriate in certain levels and in certain designs and in certain intensities. But really now what that means is we would have to start translating that to a black and white bylaw text. And that's just a whole nother level in its understandings and its workings. So we've been working with Form in Place to draft some kind of building blocks in and around that of what zoning could possibly look like one day. And I'm just going to show up this map here to explain this. And sorry for those online that aren't seeing my pointer here, but things like, and again, that you might be familiar with from downtown, but right, like lower heights and intensities in and around abutting single family areas. No residential along a Walkersbrook Drive, things of these natures. And same on Ash Street, if we were to look at this southern district, lesser building heights, lesser intensities in residential areas. And so we've started to separate these to better understand possible allowances and possible things to look at. Because ultimately, if you so chose, CPDC is the one that would have to really start tackling the zoning amendments and zoning considerations and zoning language. So we've started to establish building blocks in the public process, but it would be up to you guys if you want to pursue this as a priority in 2026, or if there's other steps you would like to see facilitated, or other just key things you want to look at, like how it might impact the fiscal tax base, how these things like design guidelines, what else can be considered outside of zoning, like fourth floor step backs, things of these nature. So I'm kind of throwing a lot at you on there, but it's really to say that there's been a year-long public engagement process, and we might have enough public input if you wanted to start considering zoning language for this area and start to better understand it. And then, like I said, that somewhat dovetails with 2026 zoning considerations, because there's other things to consider and do as well. But I just threw a lot at you on the Eastern Gateway, and there's a lot of info to read through over the next few weeks. But I wanted to start the conversation, one, to get your questions, comments, and needs, and two, just your general thoughts in and around the area, the needs, a process. So, and you don't have to answer all of that tonight, but
I think this is terrific to see. I've got one observation, and then maybe just a very broad question, but I noticed that, in the sample where we've got sub-district A, sub-district B, it looked like the visioning all happened in the portion of the district, am I right, that was on the Walkersbrook Drive side of the railroad tracks. Was
yes.
in the community discussions, was there community discussion also of the I guess the Ash Street side of the sub-district B area?
So there were community discussions from 2019 to 2021 when we worked with Gamble Associates.
But
so
I mean the last round, or was it really mostly on the?
It was mostly focused on that northern side. One, from that 2019 effort, we wanted to reinforce those things, but two, there was a lot of evolving pieces with RMLD throughout it, where in the beginning of the year, they were potentially looking at things that they might do on site. That's obviously been tempered as they've undergone their transitions, and so slowed down a little bit on that. So there's kind of a shift in gears on the southern side partway through. So we went back to try in the public surveys and other to reinforce what we heard in 2019, which was smaller mixed use possibility, maybe more residential instead of larger commercial and industrial. But there are some things to talk through on that side because it is a bit more unique.
Most of the discussions on Part B were focused on getting traffic into A.
Yeah.
Either crossing the railroad track or,
Yeah, that's a big question.
And so my other question is, Godwin, can you speak to any knowledge you have or you don't have about the extent to which this area is still a priority for the Economic Development Department? Like, is this one where folks in town who have their eye on economic development are like, we really need this? Where is that in the current priorities? I'm thinking about a metric for us deciding whether or not this is worth a whole bunch of time for us now also.
Yeah, it's hard to like put numbers to it, but I think in terms of new growth possibilities and outcomes, that this is, if not the number one targetable area, very high up there. I think Main Street still comes up because they too have large parcels that can be developed, as you've seen in the last year.
Yeah.
But in terms of possible new growth from existing values and area to what could be allowed and possibly developed one day, this is like the key area.
I've got 3 areas. I attended the meeting, so.
Oh, and I felt terrible that I couldn't.
That's okay.
I'm like down the street and somehow I still couldn't get myself there. I think I was actually not down the street at the moment, and that was the challenge.
They passed out free apples. Let's see, and this is where I disagreed with Olivia. I'd like to know just a few things, because I think some people's impressions were wrong. There was less focus on tax, and I would put more focus on tax revenues.
In terms of the priority?
Yeah, than what the group, considered. Now, I don't know what they considered, but they were less considered with it. And the one thing I'd like to know, because I just don't have any idea, with regard to residential houses and the whatever it is, 1.3 kids per household and whatever that is, what are our costs for education? Because I think those usually, industrial is usually far more tax oriented, but I'd love to know what that figure is, and I don't know whether there is a figure for that or not. I'll give you all of them.
Yeah.
My biggest observation was 2 tracks are the linchpin for sub-district A. Market Basket and Stop and Shop. They comprise the overwhelming amount of property. And if those were controlled in some way, I mean, if I was a magician and can control them, I could build your build out.
Right.
If I had those. And I think the owners are different. I tried to look a little bit at that today.
They are.
Have we ever spoken to the owners?
We have.
We have.
Yeah.
What's feedback from the owners? That's what I'd be interested in.
I think the sentiment is, right, more allowances is good for the long term for them, whether it's them themselves or any transfer in future ownerships. But it was positively well received in terms of like, this is where development is hot right now in mixed use, right? The Woburn Malls of the world, the Linfield Villages, other examples across the state, that this area does fit in a geographic sense, those type of developments. And so whether or not they would immediately, right, jump onto something new is to be determined. It's unknown. There's obviously a lot of logistics there.
Can we do a drop down zone or anything like that?
What do you mean, a drop down zone?
Well, what I mean is you create this area and you create a zone that basically says if you got so many square acres of property, you can drop down and follow this type of an approach and come at us. I mean, I had a situation in Avon, but they had 92 acres to deal with, and they didn't have to worry about kicking tenants out and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, and this is, right, the challenge, right, of these things, right? A lot of the visioning, it imagines it if the whole area was a clean slate, what's your dream?
Right.
We probably look at it as like, if this, and in the zoning, I think you have to look at it this way, is if each property was to develop individually, what does it foster? What does it look like? How do they ultimately connect in the long term if they were developed individually? But you could look at like incentives in terms of like encouraging lot consolidation and whether that's higher density allowances or higher FARs or lower parking or any combination of something like that to say, if you happen to get to a 40-acre parcel rather than a 30-acre parcel, you could do this, that, or the other. And that's just one idea and concept. There's other ways to do it. But encouraging consolidation isn't a bad thing. But I also think you want to encourage each lot at some level on its own potentially to develop one day. Otherwise, you might just be stuck in limbo waiting for them to be combined and not ever getting those stars to align.
Yeah.
Well, if I was, if I had to do what might make this work and it wouldn't, the biggest problem is the shopping centers in the center of the property are killing everything. They just make it very difficult to build out with the Market Basket and Stop and Shop there. If I had to redo it again, I'd convince Market Basket to go over to Stop and Shop. Now I would have the makings of a ability to do something.
Right.
I could build out most of A.
Right. The only thing the town can really do right, again, on the zoning is say your uses are allowed and here's where your buildings of X height are allowed. How those private developments actually get facilitated would come to you, right? And we've seen it in Andover. Market Basket opened one store on a lot and closed a store on the same lot the same day.
Yeah,
and so
that's what I do. I don't think I could do it.
Right. These things do happen. Right. You can't promise it here, but you hope, right? If you allowed for something like that to be facilitated, that it would be, but you never know, which is why, right, limitations and expectations are good in zoning, while being flexible enough for the long term in development. So that's always the tricky balance. But I do think there's potential here, and these sites are so of size that, you know, something one day could be facilitated.
Yes.
So.
But then the
So
question,
yeah, we're not that's why I was asking also about kind of the economic development priority, because we aren't the body that's out there talking to the property owners and making the deals and trying to entice businesses to come. We've laid the groundwork for somebody else to do that. And if somebody's hot to trot to do this, and it's like, oh, that would be a high priority to facilitate that with updated zoning.
Right.
In my opinion.
And to answer your former questions in some capacity, we did write a grant to try to get like a fiscal study in terms of like, if this area were to be built out to some sort of hypothetical maximum allowances on density, what would that look like units wise, and how does that translate to fiscal revenue or impact? We didn't get that grant, unfortunately. So we're trying to figure out a new way to facilitate that in the short term. But what we do know is locally, right, from 2010 to 22, when the town built 1,000 units in Reading Woods and downtown and all these other areas, that school enrollment was static. It was fairly flatlined. These developments, in terms of some of these more mixed use, larger density, they typically range lower on kids per unit than your single family home. How you capture if someone left a single family home in Reading to this area and that single family home, there's all these things to consider in that. But throughout the state and region and in Reading, we've seen that housing growth and school enrollment and or impacts aren't necessarily directly correlated. There are, of course, things to consider. I think we're meeting with some members of the school committee and would like to approach their whole committee soon, just to talk about growth in general in town. What are their needs? What are they looking at in forecasting the next 5-10 years? And where's the overlap here? But those can be looked at. We'd like to still get it on paper one day personally. And fiscal studies we've seen have shown positive impact to the tax base in other communities. Obviously, there's certain thresholds that change that. But this is such an area of opportunity, and if it was a few hundred of units coming on at a time, if you did ever allow mixed use and it were to be developed, it is well worth understanding what that means. Each development, of course, would have their own traffic studies and things, but town-wise, it's well worth talking through and all being aligned. So,
Well, also the three problem areas that I think we maybe could do some thinking about is taking, what is it, something Glen, the road that comes in from Walker's Brook, and somehow
General
figuring
way.
out how to connect it to Ash.
yeah, I think.
And then the corner up by McDonald's
Yeah,
is a mess.
yeah, that's
And then the out at
yeah.
Market Basket is a mess.
Yeah, so I mean, this partners
problems.
somewhat, right, with the Walker's Brook redesign work that is also ongoing, that has some intersection improvements and other, again, I always say there's two direct things the town can control in this area, and that's the zoning and land use policies, and that's the right-of-way design and implementation, and we're trying to tackle both right now. But I do agree, long-term wise, like, and this is a question of, right, individual lots or whole area develop, how you get access in new crossing to these areas, how the town looks at the Ash, Mean, and Bolton over the long term for fixes. Like, there's a lot to consider there, and those are heavy considerations, especially the Ash Street intersection. That is not an easy fix. There's a lot to consider there and figure out over the long term, but those are improvements we know would be, I don't know that necessary is the right term, but desirable to help facilitate access from downtown and other areas in town to this area itself.
But that's one thing, you want it to be connected.
Right.
So I have going back to like big overarching question, and I want to be sure that folks online have a chance to talk also if they want. Are you asking us basically, should we prioritize developing zoning for this like in the very near term?
That is what I'm asking, yeah. And if you don't know that answer, what will help us answer that?
What's on my mind is that if we propose zoning for this, it goes to town meeting, and some folks on town meeting might reasonably ask why, to the questions of like, just
Are you
people,
going to condemn property?
well, and also it's like, why are you trying to, you know, the questions that you've already started to answer, the question of who is pushing for this, isn't it going to, so that we have ready answers for why would we put more kids in the school? So what I think would be helpful, I might need to think about it.
Yeah.
But it might be helpful to have a discussion even with like maybe even the select board, or with the appropriate board, maybe between planning and economic development, to start really frame up the why, because I think this is great. I think, yes, we should go do it. If I were to walk in town meeting and say, look what we spent our time doing, look what we did, people would say, why?
Right.
And it's gotten some attention at the workshops, all of that work that you've done. What we know is that the people who go to these workshops aren't always the same people who show up at town meeting and are like, why? But I think we need to socialize, answer the question of why. And I think that should be paired with economic development and the good fiscal reasons why, and start to socialize that. Yeah, and get some buy-in on that.
Yeah.
So that we aren't perceived as just sitting in our little room when nobody's looking and saying, we came up with this great idea, what do you want to do?
Yeah, I would love to, between, and I'll just name a few, FinCom, Select Board,
FinCom, yeah.
School Committee, just awareness of new growth and population growth, and however static that is and slow churn that is over the next 5 to 10 years, that we're all aligned
Yeah,
and
like
agree that
the state
this-
isn't pushing us to
right,
do
nope,
this.
nope,
You know, there I can think of all kinds of reasons why this came up during this has come up in conversation. And let me see, Guy and Andrew and Hillary, we've been having this nice little chat here in the room. Do you have other questions or thoughts on how to answer Andrew's question of where does this sit in a priority?
Oh, just for my own, Andrew, do you not already have some of the, you have like potential unit counts and
Yep.
and square footages, and so there could be a pretty quick back of the napkin. You may already have it, the math on what the tax benefit is.
Yeah, it's actually been on my list of, I can probably back of the napkin look at some of these things and come up with some general estimations and
Yeah,
right,
and I think the biggest why there is this is our last shot at developing a sizable parcel in Reading that could have a significant draw for quality retail and commercial space while building out a desirable community space for people to both live, work, play, right? And we punted and missed big. Market Street should have been in Reading.
Well, there are lots of people who don't necessarily agree with that at the time, but
We punted and missed big with Market Street being in Reading. And what we ended up with was Johnson Woods, or the Pulte thing over there, which is not necessarily optimal, but is what it is.
yes, go ahead, Guy. You're not done yet. Sorry.
So I think with that said, it's a large priority for this board. This is exactly the type of thing that we should be focused on. So I guess in a long-winded sense, that is my thought.
Yeah, so let's make the case. And, I will say that unlike the arguments that are being made for Marketplace coming here way down the road, one of the things that I have always loved about this is that it's connected to the center of town. It's, there. I think if you have the financial numbers, I think that's good. We start to build out the case of the why and present those to some key boards so that we can pursue any zoning with support and knowledge of other boards that this is and kind of some buy-in that yes, this is a good thing to do.
And I can try to look to build the projections, but is it also helpful to look at like past development? And I know maybe this is on the extreme, but I look at 24 Gould Street that got redeveloped 6 years ago, and that was a vacant commercial building, so it probably wasn't at its peak value of what it was at the past. But after the redevelopment, it went down in commercial square footage, right? It was a X thousand square feet commercial vacant building, went to a 2,500 square foot commercial space, but the commercial value skyrocketed. And the residential value on top of that, you went from like about an $800,000 valued property to about 8 million total. And so these are the tricky numbers to show though, of like your commercial square footage went down, but your commercial value went up. And so I think that's more, and these are the things we're talking about internally with economic development and others, of more commercial square footage is a benefit, but higher value is also a direct benefit. So there are some like in the weeds things to talk through and look at in that sense. And maybe that's more of a FinCom thing to look at in things, but.
Yeah. I've seen such a constant struggle with the tax split, right? And us being the town, not having enough commercial and really larger quality commercial to be able to increase that tax split without penalizing, the
Yeah, I
80
would.
or 90% of businesses, which tend to be small businesses in our community, and obviously not what we want, right? We don't want to hurt the small businesses. We want them to thrive. So
Right. And I would encourage going to the select board meeting from a few weeks back where the town assessor gave his presentation on the tax rate, just because he had, in his experience with Linfield too, some good input in terms of, and comments on like how that facilitated with Linfield and what that meant for their tax shifts, levies, things of that nature. And plus the other comments in that whole night, which was a great conversation that I just listened to on like small business exemptions that could be possible and things of that nature, which again is probably all outside of this board purview, but good things to know.
If you've got the date of that select board meeting and wanna just email that
I
around
will.
to us, or
Yeah.
a link to that view for
Yep.
those of us who are interested, we could watch that, that could be helpful.
was that 3 meetings ago?
I think that
Andrew?
was 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I hear a
or
couple
so,
meetings
yeah.
ago and it's like, oh, that'll take me an hour to find it.
I might be a little bit more conservative, and I might be willing to play around with the proposed zoning changes that you would have. I'd never come out and finalize them at this point in time at all, even if we worked out things as to where we wanted to go. But I'd always want to keep certain owners informed that we're looking at this, so that they keep it in their minds.
Yep.
They're looking at it too.
Yep. Yeah, if we've kept them up to speed on both the right of way work and the zoning work, and
And the
Yeah,
why,
and the
and
whys.
that's what I
Right.
get, in the keeping the other kind of owners informed. What I want to steer toward is consensus on the why, so that,
Well, I think one of the whys has got to be that anybody that has to vacate their property, gets a choice to still stay in this development that's done if they wish.
oh, so like staying in town, you, you mean,
Even in the development.
oh, I see what you're saying.
yeah.
Because over at Market Basket, there's a whole bunch of areas over there that they could take down that are underutilized.
yeah, I mean, and we've done it in zoning of like, if you can maintain existing businesses,
Right.
maybe you qualify for a waiver consideration. But whether it's one, right, grocery is the anchor there right now, and you need a grocery anchor in town to be maintained, whether it's X, Y, or Z grocer, right? I can't guess 20 years in the future, but I know that that's important for the town to have.
Yeah, I agree, because you got to have balance.
Yeah.
So so should we, and Andrew and Hillary, I don't mean to be talking over you if you want to chime in as well. But would you like to develop a slide deck? I mean, I wish we I wish we had in Reading, economic development is not my forte, and of course, I wish we had a business association also, because what it's also on my mind is if we are looking to bring in lots of commercial, it usually ends up being chains, right? I'm just gonna say this, I also want to get a feel for how our small business community feels about that also.
Yeah, same.
I think that's a really important audience.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And it's the things we've also considered, right, in the zoning and future discussions, but to limit chains or big box, you can try to look to establish like smaller square footage commercial requirements or separation of spaces to say like, we'd rather this 1,500 square foot small business, 10 of those rather than 125,000 big box Marshalls or something like that. But both are good and both have a place, and so that's a lot to talk through.
Let me throw this out. Would you want to see outlet stores there?
That's a question for you guys in the town, and
No.
I don't
I'll bet you
I
would
don't
get lots
potentially
of
think
different
there's-
answers to that, yeah. Okay,
I don't-
okay.
I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that. I do think that you need quality anchor tenants to facilitate the draw to a development of this nature. In my past life, I did this for AT&T many moons. I was the head of their retail growth plan in New England across all 6 states. Then we had a very expensive tool and model built by CBRE to help identify places to put AT&T stores. And there was always a formula without even looking at the model that made it make sense. And it was, you had to have certain anchors in there, right? And I'm not saying we need, a Walmart to come in.
Right.
But there is certainly a way to facilitate maintaining some of the big box that we have there today, and drawing in some of maybe the more boutique stuff or neighborhood business types, and having them all amalgamate together in this nice little area that I think should be, looked at. Andrew, I've said this before, and it kind of went organically in its own direction through those meetings that you were hosting, but it should be a bit of a toned down assembly row, right? Where it felt more neighborhood, less big city, but still had a lot of that feel and amenity and shopping and community space, accessibility to both public transportation and the park aspects of it, and connectivity to the lake.
Right.
I think you did a great job leading that, and I think some of the ideas that they put together, the plans, I think they make a lot of sense. Now, getting all those property owners to buy into this vision and actually threading the needle on this is going to be will be an achievement of a lifetime for sure. But I think you're right. I think putting the zoning in place, and hopefully, with a very clear master plan.
And I tend to agree with all those sentiments, right? Your anchors and your residential, hopefully at a certain level, can help sustain in the trend.
I actually harmonized with Guy on this, because I believe that, the sustainability for the amount of real estate taxes that we pay and the lack of commercial retail property that we have in the town in comparison to our sister towns, so to speak. We do a lot of comparison to Lexington and Wakefield, but they pay substantially less than their real estate taxes in comparison for funding. And so I harmonize strongly with Guy. I harmonize a lot with, we missed an opportunity with the Market Street. Regardless of how people feel or don't feel about it, I was in the town vote for that. I've been here for over 30 years. And, a lot of that came from not wanting riffraff in the town. Regardless of commercial building or taxes or anything else. And here we are paying 98.6% real estate tax to fund our budget. So, anything we can do to make something move forward in a positive note, I think is positive.
So, Hillary, is there anything you'd like to add to that as well?
I don't think I have anything to add at this time. Thank you.
Okay, so I feel like we should move the conversation along. What do you see as the next step? Because you're going to be doing a bulk of this work with us, of course.
So I think I'd like to show you some of the why a bit more, like you had asked, and I think I can do that. I gotta be careful on some of the financials and take a deeper dive into that over the next few weeks, but we'll see what we can whip together, whether that's existing development scenarios and the new growth that fostered, or specific numbers here that we can work towards. We can do that, and then I'd probably like to jump in, if it's helpful, to pull back up that kind of sub-district map and start reinforcing some of those things. Like we might, and this is maybe for the next conversation, but like you might decide, well, we should really only focus on the north side right now, because that south side, RMLD side is harder in terms of its configuration and things to, or we tackle both, but I'd like to start framing the questions and then getting your answers and getting your questions next month.
I'd only focus on the B side, you know, for access to the A side.
Yeah, but that would come
Or
through like
improvements
development, I think. And so those are the things to consider, right? If you want access built to development and change over there is what would facilitate that to a degree, like because nobody's talking town
Yeah, I'm
taking
kind
or
of-
development or anything, and so
I'm kind of undecided on that, and I'll tell you why. And I think those are the right steps. I mean, if you wanted to kind of craft up like a draft slide deck,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
the idea of like,
exactly.
if we all agree on the why,
Mhm.
then it's easier to start to talk to other people about the why
Yep.
and build the why with other groups so that we're building
Mhm.
consensus around that. And by the way, I need to be really clear, I'm not skeptical on the why. I think we all are like, yeah, let's do this.
Mhm.
And we may have slightly different reasons, and we need to share that case and enthusiasm with others so
Mhm.
that as we work on zoning, people are excited about doing
Right.
that and not wondering what the heck we're doing. And I want to think about the A versus B, A only versus B, because part of me also thinks, okay, you've got this other huge chunk of land there,
Mhm.
and wouldn't it be beneficial to zone them both in this at the same time so that we can think this through, envision it through, as opposed to ultimately kind of accidentally stranding that RMLD
Right.
side? Yeah.
And I lean towards the former a little bit, but there are things definitely to work through. on
Yeah.
that.
So yeah,
And I
work on
would
a
like-
slide deck and bring us some of these key
Yeah,
questions that
absolutely.
that help us all together.
And I think I'd like to, in that same breath, also, like I mentioned, like we're trying to get to some school committee, you know, just to get their questions, thoughts, input, and if that helps you, and I can put those on a slide and the
Yeah.
things that they want to look at or consider, and just all of this, so it all is one, hopefully, big package,
Yeah.
good present. So
Andrew.
I agree the school's important.
Yeah.
Looking at the elephant in the room
Mhm.
and knowing that, you know, really this development hinges on the buy-in of creating a significant amount of open space
mhm.
that is going to be a big why for a lot of people.
Yep.
Right? Usable, tangible amenity space, not just for that area, but the community at large, the town. How do we implement zoning when it could be developed parcel by parcel and not necessarily holistically?
Yeah, right.
That to me is an amazing challenge, and a challenge for everyone, right? To come up with language that, because otherwise what you end up having is like, you know, parcel A has X amount of square feet. Okay, well, we've got to achieve so much open space. Well, great, we've got a 2,000 square foot, you know, dog park here, but
Yeah, you
doesn't
end up
really
with a
go
patch
to
of
that.
artificial turf that nobody can actually even play ball on, much less do anything else.
Right. And
I think
Yeah,
that's a really
exactly.
good
Yes,
point. And I
yes.
think there are also ways to do that.
Yeah.
Although I don't know exactly what they are.
And
Yeah.
this is where when we really get into it, and there's different ways to do it, right? But it is the ultimate challenge. You're absolutely right, guys. And the fun of it too. But right, if you have minimum required open space, whether that's square footages or percentages, you can look to establish maybe minimum lengths and widths, or you know, if it's a minimum X percentage of a lot, at least 50% of that total needs to be contiguous, or so, and we'll have to work through what
How
that
many
means.
lots are there?
There's,
There's
I
about
call it 5, I think, on the north side. North side being the Walker's Brook side, General Way.
Well, there's
There's a
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 until you get the
6.
crossroad, and then 3 more.
1, 2,
8.
3, 4, 5. It's 6 on the Walker's Brook side, and somewhat similar on the southern side, if you exclude some town parcels. So,
I mean, you can also think about I don't know exactly the tool to do this, but I'm confident it can be done, but you can also think about linear types of open space.
Right.
That as each parcel gets developed, there's a clear vision and expectation that this will be cobbled together. Is one way to do that. Whether linear open space is going to be, what the full community wants,
Right.
that's a question, but we can maybe figure
From
that
what
out.
we've heard, a large common space and something that's fairly passive but can be programmed, whether commercial, town-wise, culturally, would be a benefit. And similarly to that exact point, right of way and access, if one lot was developed first, how can we almost preemptively plan the connection to the next lot if it's ever to be developed?
Right, that's more where I was headed, Andrew.
Yeah,
And
that's
how do you guarantee that inevitably the open space that you need
right.
is allowed to be programmed? Because what we don't want is a bunch of fragmented open space.
Right.
Agreed.
Right.
And I don't think that's an elephant in a room. I'm glad you brought that up, Guy, because it was very much on my mind also.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we'll do that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in my mind, as I said, 2 lots are key.
Right.
I have a question, actually. So when we're talking about this, and I'm kind of thinking back to the MBTA communities process that we went through, is what is our timeline for presenting this bringing this to town meeting, and how are we bringing, I mean, I know we've had the workshops with the public, but I'm just trying to think through the process of how do we bring this into zoning.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a rush. It's going to take time to work through the specifics of this one. And so if it ends up, call it November town meeting of 2026, ideally we work through language and then engage around that. And hopefully bring it to town meeting and then see what happens. But there's a lot to talk through, both on the language side, on all of the town considerations. Yeah. So, but we're talking to public safety, right? They have needs already and things in terms of future planning and growth and things. School, same thing. And so and some of those exist with or without a development like this. And so it's just hopefully clearly articulating those things and finding the answers, right? That what are the impacts, what are the benefits, and clearly articulating those.
Yeah, and then another thing that's on my mind to navigate is preparing to bring this to town meeting. I'm just gonna say it, elephant in the room, while we also are not currently doing the master plan that everyone's, this is, kind of like another plan, but we'll need to somehow navigate that, yeah. There, we said a lot of things. We said open space, we said MBTA communities, which I was like, it's like saying Voldemort.
Sorry, just on that piece too, is another thing to consider is, and this is a key point to me to talk through with you guys, of the inclusionary zoning, right? Because MBTA communities didn't maybe allow us to do that in a wholehearted fashion, which is why we kind of steered away from this area.
Yeah.
That and other considerations of multifamily by right, yada, yada, yada. But working through maybe some of the housing stock things with you guys, because you might 80% area median income like downtown might foster development, but do you also want to consider 60% area median income to get deeper affordabilities and things of that nature? And so that's a whole nother beast, one, both in trying to get them, and two, making sure that they aren't prohibiting development through its financial impacts on development. And so those are things we have to figure out too.
Yep.
So
To me,
a lot of work.
taxes and schools are important.
Yeah. And I'll,
And I don't even know what the current tax base is of, subsection A, for example. I don't even know what it generates in terms of taxes.
right.
And affordability is important.
Yeah. So,
All right,
okay, thank you.
thanks, that was a
Very
good
helpful.
discussion.
Yeah.
We don't need to stay here later than we need to. what did you have in mind for the 2026 zoning considerations? And then we should get to the meeting schedule and maybe we can approve one set of minutes.
I'll be quick on this one and I can send this to you.
Most of them are what we just talked about.
Yeah, actually. I mean, through the year or two, we've been compiling a list of things that just come up. And I haven't sent this to you yet, and I'll try to add a bit more detail. But there's a handful of things that come up every so often in terms of looking at. So one was this Eastern Gateway and possible mixed use allowances. Two is the accessory apartments, just again, trying to have similar, if not the same regulations as the state, because we do have some internal things with that, and we've been able to manage it and make it work, but it would be nice to get our local zoning aligned with the state's allowances, because there are conflicts and challenges associated with it. I think minimum lot size was a thing back from 2 or 3 years ago of like, and that's really a whole large discussion in and of itself that would take a lot of engagement and effort, but looking at things like, if we reduce the minimum lot size to 8,000 square feet or something like, I'm just throwing out a number, do we alleviate the need for current homeowners to need special permits for small additions and things, and maybe even open those to be by right, things of that nature that have a lot to it. Sign bylaw always comes up as a confusing bylaw. A few years ago, we looked at the use table to maybe make more explicitly clear. We didn't advance it, but things like defining breweries or other uses, and there's some conflicts in the use table too, and there might be things you want to consider, and right, storage centers over at Walkersbrook, you want to try to get ahead of that, and like
We'll get ahead of it. Okay. Is this a thing that's coming?
No,
Okay,
just like right, if you want to try to foster development of one kind, do you prohibit other kinds?
Yeah.
And just other things to consider there. Subdivision regs come up in terms of right, maybe the standards, because we do a lot of waivers. I personally think that the process is good because it leads to better discussions and hopefully public benefit with waivers, but the standards are pretty high on a 60-foot right of way in cul-de-sac. Others like stormwater regs, right? Actually, what you might have seen or heard is like, we have a stormwater permit minimum, but what we don't have or clearly explicitly say is like, here's another trigger for stormwater, and every development of X size needs to capture at least the 10-year storm, for example. We do not make that explicitly clear. So we do go back and forth of like, can you capture the 5? Can you capture the 10, the 25? And it tends to vary at times. And some are more willing than others, but we actually don't explicitly say that. Not a lot of people do. We rely on Mass DEP and others.
Because there are state regulations that are going to get updated. And how does that, I should know, how does that affect what we do locally?
We're gonna have to talk about that, I think, as we learn more with DEP. And there's some interesting things that they're proposing in terms of.
But I'd like to know what those are.
Yeah.
I find stormwater to be, be on the other side of the chair.
Yeah.
The board. I find that to be one of the most frustrating things, that from community to community, they vary so greatly.
Mhm.
Wow.
Whereas, on a state level, they have some thoughts. We don't seem to want everyone get on board with one standardized methodology. So,
things like passive house requirements for all development or advanced stretch code and pace, just things to consider. South Main Street design guidelines, right? We implemented mixed use allowances in 2019, but I don't think we ever went back and looked at the design guidelines or looked to see if they do make sense with it. I think they do, but there might be some changes that could be facilitated or looked at. So these are just things to think about. I think I'd rather try to build them out a bit more and just give you some notes. And if we want to talk about it next meeting.
Okay.
But
how busy is our next meeting looking?
as far as I know, it should be that one application earlier, so similar to tonight.
Well, my observation is that number 2, number 4, and number 7C are relatively easy. 2 ought to be simple, and I'd love to get a report on accessory apartments.
2 is fairly straightforward.
Yeah.
In my sense, but there are different things to consider there too, and a few different things the town could do. In terms of its permitting and development, we've seen some coming up. But it's not beyond actually what we were permitting, not too far beyond what we were permitting in prior years when we had the special permit process. So probably
that was my question, Andrew, because we talked about this last time when it came up briefly. Hillary, I think you, Heather, I think you were traveling for that meeting, and it was briefly brought up, and I think it was almost as if it wasn't worth talking about
right.
because we literally aren't getting nearly any additional volume than what we were getting anyways with our all permissible or bylaw that we had in place today.
So the by right facet doesn't change too much from what we're doing now.
It hasn't dramatically increased the pace. I'm sure it has been an uptick, but not in a dramatic sense of but there just are things to consider, right? We say special permit and they are protected uses, and while we allow more square footage somewhat, there's just some conflicts, and it's almost more for applicants to me and some of our inspectional staff, just to be aligned and not have 2 different sets of regulations to go by right 900, special permit 1,000 and things. Right. But
that to me is I actually, notwithstanding, Guy, what I just heard you say, that to me is kind of a high priority because it's something that everybody can do by right, and almost by cleaning up our bylaws to be consistent and easy. It also is a way to, at least when we go to town meeting, to let people know that this is something you can do. I mean, I think there's real promise in that in terms of that missing middle. And then maybe what we can do, if you want to work on that list a little bit more, maybe at the next meeting we can, if you send it ahead of time, we can each come with like our top 2 or 3 and see where that leads us.
And also if and we could always talk about it, but if you're like, yes, we'll do Eastern Gateway or look at this deeper, and if that's a lot in and of itself, these things can wait, some of them, but we can also do 2 or 3 at the same time.
We could do, I mean, the ADUs should be fairly straightforward.
Yeah.
We could probably do that and a more complex one at the same time. Right.
So, all right, anyways, just food for thought.
I'd add one more. Have we tried to get grant money for the updates, like the 10-year reviews and stuff like that?
You mean the master plan?
Master plan.
Yes.
Yes. So we did submit a grant for that as well. We did not receive that grant either. We did strike out this year in almost all our grant requests in terms of planning grants.
That'd be a good one to put in for too.
Well, yeah, we just did, and we didn't get the funding for it.
Right. And I can ask again.
2026 is another year.
We also told, I think we told town meeting that we would make a pitch for how much it would cost. If the will of town meeting is to just foot the bill, then we should tell them how much it costs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me align some points on that and go back to the scope estimate we had in spring, I think.
Because it won't be ready for, it's November town meeting is coming up.
Right. Yeah,
so we're not going to be talking about it then, but if they wanted to do some sort of a supplemental budget, with all the money that we're rolling in here.
Right, on our subdivision fees.
Yeah, with our subdivision fees, right?
So in short term, no master plan, at least that I can tell right from grant and not being on the November warrant. So.
Okay.
Next.
And 2026 meeting schedule?
Yep, so we threw that in your drive, I think in 2026, we are almost able to entirely meet the second Monday of every month. with the exception of like November and December, if I remember correctly. But those dates are there, October and November. Those dates are in the drive and we can put them in the next one too. But in the short term, you're looking at January 12th and February 9th. And so we're keeping it consistent of one meeting a month, second Mondays, hybrid allowances.
That sounds great, thank you.
And if you want to propose anything of more meetings or a change in start time or anything, just let us know.
Now, under October, you've got the first Monday of the month due to holiday. What is the holiday on the 9th? And
the holiday is on the
2nd?
9th.
Okay.
And so I went with the week prior.
I just
than
didn't
after.
quite understand that.
Yeah.
How's the 7 PM start time working for everybody? I think I was the one who struggled with it most, and my evening schedule has changed, so that's not so much a problem for me anymore.
It's okay for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, later really isn't an option, so 7 and 7.
The earlier we start, the earlier we finish, and so that's why it was worth
It was the
me
guiding
struggling
message.
to
Then we end up here till midnight
Yeah,
sometimes.
well,
so, but-
theoretically, the earlier we finish, right? Okay, thank you for
Okay.
putting that in.
Yeah, and we'll resend that just to make sure you know it's there and can plug them in. And I think
You guys wanna do a set of minutes and then maybe we could do the rest next time? I would be psyched to be out of here not too long. Is anybody ready with comments on the July 14th minutes?
I've read that one before and I don't have it with me now.
Sorry.
Should I bring it up or what?
Sure. It's in our packet I had only one.
Share my screen if that helps too.
Okay, I think I had only one edit on that. Michelle Souza's name is sometimes spelled
Okay.
Sousa and then later on ZA.
Okay,
So just to correct
and the
that.
correct one is ZA, right?
Okay, so the first
I
one.
No,
I think it's
SA?
actually SA is
Okay.
the one. Thank you,
Yes.
Hillary.
I will correct all of those.
Find the Souzas.
Okay, here we go here.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah,
Get it in your head once and then it's all down here.
thanks, Hillary. And I don't have any other edits to that one.
Okay. Yeah, I can make sure those are all corrected.
Last paragraph on page 2.
Thank you.
For some reason, I can't pull anything up now.
Oh, no.
I'm into it, but I can't pull them up. Let's see, let's get out of it and get back in.
Yeah, these are long ones.
Yeah, and I'll do my best. That was the only one I read. I can do my best to read the other ones before the next meeting. Okay. Did you have any, you found yours, Tom?
Yep, I did. That's fine. I'll move that we accept the minutes as amended.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, great, thank you. And we'll do a roll call vote. Guy,
Yes.
Hillary,
yes,
Andrew?
Yes.
Okay, Heather, yes, Tom?
Yes.
All right, great. Good job.
Nice.
8:59.
Nailed it.
How's everyone feeling?
Paul Ripley's, believe it or not.
We could do more, but I like doing a 2-hour meeting.
Nice, huh?
So let's do more next time, especially if we have
Okay,
another
very good.
light, if we have another light meeting.
Okay. Does that mean you want a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
I'm waiting.
I just noticed another error and
Oh no.
I'm sorry, I didn't
No,
notice this
I'm
before. Adjournment on that one,
Yes.
just go back and make this. Says it was adjourned by Weston, Klisch, Arena, Armstrong, and Weston wasn't there, so I think he needs to
Good point.
substitute Mangello for,
Yes.
Weston.
That is a good.
Sorry.
catch.
Good catch.
yeah,
Now do you want my motion?
yes,
So moved
please.
that we adjourn?
Okay, I'll second. All those in favor? Aye, yes. Okay, everybody.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good night.
Good night.